Today we're going to get an introduction to what's called a series. And a series is very similar to sequences, which you learned about last week. So if you remember from last week, a sequence is a list of numbers that follows a pattern. But what we did is we just listed those numbers out as a big list of numbers. Now what we're going to do with a series is instead of just making a list of numbers, we're going to take all those numbers and we're going to add them together and just have one single answer to the question. So for example, here's a sequence. This is something we might have looked at last week. It's a very simple one. It's all the even numbers, where basically the pattern is we're adding 2 each time. So it goes 2, comma 4, comma 6, comma 8, comma 10. And last week I might have asked you guys, what's the next number in the sequence? And you would have said 12. Just add 2 again. Now what we're going to see this week is the exact same type of thing, but what you notice is I took all those commas and I changed them to plus. So that's the difference between a sequence, which is numbers separated by commas, and a series, which is numbers separated by pluses. Now the other thing about series is you can actually do the series. You can add it all up. So if I'm looking at this question right here, let's just add it up and see what this gets. So 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 6 more is 12, 12 plus 8 is 20, and 20 plus 10 is 30. So the answer to the question, we'll just turn this into an example basically. If I said evaluate the series, 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 8 plus 10, you would just add them all up and the answer is 30. So nice easy question there. Alright, what I want to focus on for the rest of the notes today is a notation we're going to use. So remember last week we said A sub n is a term in a sequence. Well, S sub n stands for a sum or a series. So the letter S stands for series or sum, and both of those mean add up. So Sn means the sum of the first n terms of the series. Remember, n's a variable. Like last week we said an is a formula for any term of the sequence. Well, Sn, it depends on what number I give you. So for example, if I give you a question and I ask you guys, I give you a series, and I ask you guys to find S8, then what I'm really asking you to do is add up the first 8 terms of the sequence. Now, like the last example that we just saw, that's pretty easy. It's just adding up 8 numbers. But you might need to find some of the terms first, and that's where it ties in with what we did last week. So if I only give you 5 terms and ask you guys to find S8, then what that means to you is I need to find the 6th and 7th and 8th term. You need to keep going and expand that until you found enough terms to add up. So let's try one of those. Let's find S7 for this series. And remember the first key is understanding what S7 is. You got to know the notation. So when I say find S7, what I'm saying is add up the first 7 terms. Well, let's see how many we have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not enough. I need 2 more. So let's write out at least 2 more. Now, in order to find more terms, we have to do exactly what we did last week, like with a sequence. Because remember, series follows the same rules as sequence. We still have a pattern. We have to figure out the pattern and use it to find more terms. So if I look at this series, same rules as sequences. The first 2 patterns I always look for are what we called arithmetic and geometric from last week. I'm going to see if the pattern is either we're adding or we're multiplying by the same thing. And this looks like an arithmetic series to me, because if you notice the pattern here, each time you're adding 4. It's a little harder to see with the negative numbers, but yeah, -7 plus 4 is -3. -3 plus 4 is 1. And then once you get the positive numbers, it's a little easier to recognize. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 4 is 9. So we found our pattern, and all we have to do is keep adding 4 to get as many terms as we needed. In this case, we need 2 more terms. So 9 plus 4 is 13. And 13 plus 4 is 17. So now we have our 7 terms, but that's not the answer to the question. Because remember, I asked you guys to do S7, which means we need to actually add those up. So let's start adding. If we start with the -7 and the -3, that gives us -10. And then we're going to start adding positive numbers. So you add 1, you have -9, plus 5 is -4, plus 9 is 5, plus 13 is 18, and then we'll finish it up. 18 plus 17 is 35, and that's going to be our final answer. And you don't have to do them in your head like I'm doing. You don't have to walk through and do it in your head like that. You can do it on scratch paper. You can use a calculator. Those are totally fine. What we're focusing on is the concepts, the notation, understanding what S7 means, and the concept of being able to expand a series to see enough terms to add them up. When you get to the actual adding part, if you want to do that on a calculator, that's fine.